Welcome to the channel. Today I'll demonstrate how to import parts from an Excel spreadsheet into an EPLAN parts database. Okay, so the first step in the process is we will use a config file provided by EPLAN to create a bidirectional I/O map to facilitate the import and export of data into the parts database. Now this is pre-configured by EPLAN. You can modify it if you know what you're doing and make custom maps. But in this video, I'll only discuss the default or standard map. And most people will use this either in a CSV, and I'll show you how to use it in a tab delineated format. All right. Next, we're going to tell the parts manager to use this config file. We're going to link it to the import export tool. We're then going to take some sample parts data and we're going to export it to an intermediary text file. We're then going to import that text into an Excel spreadsheet. Once we have that Excel spreadsheet formatted using the config file, all the data that we need will be in the proper columns, in the proper place, to just copy and paste information into this Excel spreadsheet and then send it to the EPLAN parts database. Okay, once we have the Excel spreadsheet formatted and created, we can now copy and paste or directly enter the data that we want to import into EPLAN into the spreadsheet. We will then save the data that's in the spreadsheet either into a CSV or tab delineated text file, and then we can directly import that text file into the EPLAN parts database. Now I show here a representation of a Access file, but you can certainly do this in SQL as well, same process. All right. Now this may look like an overly complicated process on first viewing, but much of this demonstration is the setup process to create this import export Excel spreadsheet. Right. Once you have that set up, it's simply a matter of entering data in there and then creating the export text file and sucking it into EPLAN. Okay, the first thing we want to do is back up our data. We don't want to do anything in EPLAN that involves the word import without first making sure that our parts database is protected. Okay, to back up your database, simply refer to one of the previous videos that I created that describes in detail the process of backing up both a Microsoft Access and a Microsoft SQL parts database. Please do this before you proceed. Okay, let's go back to our master data folder that we had open previously and take a look at some files that we overlooked the last time we were in there. These are text files that are shipped with EPLAN, all right, and installed with the base install. And these are used for mapping data to perform data import and exports into the parts database. So one or two of these will actually use, one of these that I use quite often, it's called csvimportexport.cfg, all right? There's that one and another one right below it, CSV import export addresses. So one of these can be used for bringing parts information, general parts information into a parts database. Another is helpful for setting up your manufacturers and vendor information so you don't have to do it all at once. You can bring it into an Excel spreadsheet and bring a list of them all in at once. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and make a copy. I don't ever want to modify these directly. I always want to leave these as original. I'm going to make a copy of that CSV import export.config and then go over to the demo folder that I created and place a copy of that in there. So as I double click on this, all I need is either Notepad or a text editor to bring this up. And what we have here is a header area up here that does the configuration work, the setup work. You know, we define what type of separator we're going to use for our data, how many lines we're going to skip before the data actually starts, whether it contains a header, whether we want to include the field or property names for the reports, whether we have a specific region or country code that we want to use here. By default, this file is set up to use a comma separator, and the assignment is right in the header and immediately follows the separator command. Many other separators can be used, but I personally prefer to use the tab separator. I've had problems in the past when using a comma separator when working with large multilingual data sets with extensive notes, and I've developed confidence when using the tab separator. Since the tab symbol is invisible, I will also leave a comment stating that I've modified this file to use the tab separator. Okay, so I'll just go in here and delete the comma and hit the tab key on my keyboard. When I hit the tab key on my keyboard, no visible symbol is created. It's just an empty space. All right, so I'm going to go up here and hit File Save. Okay, let's go ahead and close this out and return to the demo. Okay, we want to go in here now that we've made those changes, and I want to modify the name of this file to reflect those changes. Right now it says CSV import export. I'm going to tweak this a little bit so that it says, instead of CSV, I want it to say tab. So now that clearly says tab import export, all right? So I want to save that. And next step, we're going to go ahead and first thing we'll do is, rather than bring data in, is we want to bring data out so we can see what the interface file looks like, all right? Okay, let's go back to EPLAN and configure the export, all right? So to do this, I want to go to my parts manager and click on the icon and launch my parts database. I want to take a quick look in here and verify visually that it's connected to the correct database. This is a demo database we made a video ago that only has one part in it that we downloaded from the data portal. That's perfect. And what we're going to use this data for is these are the default data fields that have been assigned by the manufacturer for the proper orientation in the data portal. And when we generate this output, we'll create an Excel spreadsheet with all the columns in it that we need and the data from an example part placed in that report or that file so that we can then visually use that information to help identify what columns are which. So first thing I want to do is go to the bottom right and find the extras button, and I want to select that. All right, and we're given a whole list of tool options, and one of these is going to be import and export. For this example, we're going to first export some data, so I want to click export and configure that for an export. Because I've changed it to a tab, I'm going to use the text file type, all right? So I'm going to select that. The next thing I want to do is go over to the right here where this little 3-dot ellipses icon is. And I want to click on that and I want to select our config file. This is going to be used by EPLAN to map the data to the correct columns in the output file, all right? So I'm going to click on the 3 dots and verify where I am. See user EPLAN data public parts demo, and there's my tab import export. There's the config file that we created in the previous example. I'm going to say open to select that and okay. So I know that the file type and then the config is correct. This is easy to miss, so don't forget it. And then I want to give it a output file name. So let me click on the 3 dots to see where this is going. Parts demo, yep. Demo parts, that sounds like a good one. So I'm going to go down here to the OK button and select OK, and we're going to generate our output file. All right. I've done this previously. It's asking me if I want to overwrite that. I'm going to say yes. And in a flash, it's done. It did it in a flash because there's only one part. Once we get up to 1,000 or 10,000 parts, it's going to take a little bit. All right. What we want to do now is open up Excel. All right. And we're going to open up a new data worksheet, and we're going to bring that information into Excel. All right. And by doing so, we can use the tab properties as a delimiter to parse that text. So I'm going to go up to my data tab, and select it. And I'm going to go, I want to select data from a text or CSV file. That's get and transform data. All right. I should get a dialog here. I want to go to my default file. It's in my demo folder, and I want to select the part that we just created in the previous exercise. All right. So I'll select import, and I should get a dialog somewhere here. By default, I believe it comes up with a comma delimiter. I want to switch that from comma to tab. These are all the other delimiters you are welcome to try using with that config file. I've used semicolons, colons, tabs, and something I think called a pipe. And those all work, but I find the tab works the best for me. Now, if I look here, scroll through this a little bit, I can see basically what we have is the header information in the top 3 rows, very common. And then we have one part down here in row 4 or something. That looks good. I'm going to select load down here at the bottom. All right, load. When I select that, it should, Excel should populate the worksheet with all the information here. All right, and if I look closely up here in row 2, it's already created a table and it's already imported my data. If I look up here in row 2, these are the actual names of all the properties from our config file. If I go back here and open it up, right, all these names of these properties here are actually loaded in to our Excel spreadsheet right here. And technically it does that because we have this command here called field title equals 1. Additionally, we can see that following the property names, we have a hashtag and a numeric value that is used to map each property to a specific column in the data set. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a Excel file first, all right? And I'm going to do that in my demo folder. Let's see, parts, demo parts. Okay. And let's close out of this. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to find some sample parts to bring in. So I have a list of manufacturers and manufacturers' part numbers and then descriptions. And this is a good start, but before I copy and paste this information into the spreadsheet that we just created, I want to modify this information a bit to add something like additional information like an EPLAN part number column, a manufacturer short code, things that we know we'll want to have in the parts database that we can typically get automatically from the data portal that I can go ahead and do right now that will save me time later. So EPLAN through this config file can't bring in the full manufacturer's name. That's for the address import export tool. But what we can bring in is a manufacturer's short name. And that short name will also be used to help build the official EPLAN part number right here. So I'm going to call this MFG short. All right. And then to the right over here, I'm going to create another column that says, or EPLAN part number. All right. So we have now the manufacturer's short name, the order number, the EPLAN part number description. We'll add one more in here and we'll call that the note. All right. I think that will do it. All right. So, so manufacturer short number, what are we talking about? Let me move this out of the way for a second. We'll go back into EPLAN and bring up the data portal. And an EPLAN part number has, and I'll show you in a moment here, here's an ABB part. It has the manufacturer's short name followed by a period, followed by the order number. All right. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a bunch of those in our sample parts. So Allen Bradley's easy. It's A-B. if you're one of those folks who's using the NFPA inch libraries, then you're going to have a folder called A-B_N. The rest of these manufacturers can be easily found on the data portal. Many of these at this point I know by memory, so I'll just go ahead and fill those in. What we're trying to do is create a manufacturer short name that we will then concatenate with the order number, which will form the EPLAN part number. Each part entered in the parts database has to have what's called the part number. The part number in actuality is an EPLAN part number. You can technically use whatever format for part number you want, but what will happen is when you begin to use the data portal, you'll have the EPLAN part numbers downloaded from the data portal plus your own format of part numbers. So I like to have all my part numbers have a standard format. There is a field called ERP part number for in-house part numbers. So if you want to have, you want to use in-house part numbers, perfectly fine. There's a place to put it. I just, want to avoid sending you down a path where you have, 3 different types of part numbers in the part number field. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the rest of this stuff in, and I'll come back when I'm done. The next thing I want to do is go over to this other column that I created for notes, and I want to type in some text called new part. And right now it doesn't seem like this is going to make a whole lot of sense because really this part database is empty. But let's say, this isn't the first time you've done this, or this is a project you just got handed by your boss. Hey, this is Acme company wants a new control panel, and here's a list of preferred parts that they want to use on this. All right. But for now, I'm just going to copy this down, drag, select, bring it down. And what this will allow me to do, and I'm going to hit Control D and fill that. What this will allow me to do is in the notes or the description field of the part, inside of the parts manager, it's going to allow me to create a filter and then find each one of these parts that I just brought in, right? So now when I bring in new parts, I don't have to dig around through 100 other parts to figure out where was the next new part. I can go through these one at a time, add things that are my company standards, such as an image file if one exists, make sure that there's a macro. If it's a device that I'm going to use in a schematic, is there a function template available? All that sort of stuff. I go through my checklist. And when that part is currently ready for use on in a production database, I'll go in here to the note area and delete that out or put something else in. All right. So when I'm done, I can filter for these. And when these are all gone, then I'll know that all my parts are ready for use. All right. Okay, enough of that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, right, still as an XLS file, right, because I may want to use this or update it in the future, all right. But to actually import the information, we want to open our other file that we generated earlier. And that has all the column heading information in it. So let me drag this out of the way for a moment and go back into the demo project folder and see if I created a demo parts XLS. There it is. I want to open that up. There we go. Okay. Here's the demo parts XLS. If I look at my notes for this video, I should be able to find something for this. Right off the bat, I can see that the EPLAN part number is right here in column B. All right, part NR. That is the EPLAN part number. That's part of what we just created over here, right? EPLAN part number. And what I want to do is I want to copy that information over. Now, word of caution, we created this information in this column using a formula. So we'll have to use a special paste technique to get it out. Or we should use a special technique. So I'm going to drag select that, There's different ways to do that, of course. I'm going to Control C to copy it. And I'm going to go over here to this destination file, and I'm going to right click on the first column, first field underneath the first available part number. And I want to fill this area down in through here with these new part numbers. So I'm going to right click in here, and I'm going to select Paste Special. Now you can either click on Paste Special directly, or you can use the pop-out dialog. If you're using the pop-out dialog, you can go down here to this image, this icon that has a little clipboard, paste by value, right? Paste by value. And on the next one, we'll go ahead and use the direct click, all right? So what I have now, I've pasted all my values for my part numbers. All right, so I want to go ahead and highlight that one so I have a record of it. I want to go and find the rest of the fields in here, and I want to paste the rest of the information over. So, okay, so that gives me everything here. I believe I'm done. Can't bring in the full manufacturer's name at this point. Okay, so again, you could scroll through here for days and add stuff to this, and that may be worthwhile, but be careful in here. Don't rearrange the columns. Don't fix misspellings, you know. Get in here, add and copy the content that you want, and that's it. All right. So now this is an XLS file. Still, I want to save that XLS file, but now to get this ready to import back into the database, I want to do something unique. I want to save it as a tab delineated file, all right, or delimited, all right, and maybe I'll call that demo parts _ tab, something like that to make it easy to find. All right, I'm gonna hit save. It's gonna complain about that. I don't care. I'm going to jump over to that file before I close this out and see if it's in there. And I saved it in my demo project folder. So I have a demo parts _ tab. Perfect. All right, so I don't need this anymore. I can close both of these out. Now what's handy is if I ever need to bring some more parts in, I can just open up this Excel spreadsheet, which is right here. All right. And I can just add more stuff on the bottom. All right. When we go to import the parts, you'll see that EPLAN has the ability to monitor this information as it comes in. And based on the EPLAN part number, if that EPLAN part number already exists in the database, it will not import a copy of that. All right. So that's very handy. There's other things it can do too. It won't overwrite your descriptions or things like that. All important stuff. All right. So I'll close out of this. Okay. Returning to EPLAN, let's go ahead and start the import process. All right. So to do that, I want to go back to my, open my parts manager. All right. And I'm going to verify that this is the same correct database, double check. The demo parts database, I can see the name of it right here. Okay. And I'm going to go down to the extras tab to begin the import process, right? So I want to select import from the options list. And when I do that, it will bring up import records dialog. Last time it brought up an export records dialog. This time it's bringing up an import records dialog. I want to, of course, change the file type to a text file. For those of you who are still using CSV for parts or CSV files, you want to bring in CSV for parts. And the last step, when I saved it as a tab delineated, you want to saved it as a CSV file. All right, I probably should have mentioned that then. I'm going to select text. This should already be set up. If I click on my config file, it should still be using the demo tab import export file that we created earlier. All right. In this case, we're not assigning a file name, but we're looking for the specific file that we created in the export process. So I'm going to go to my default folder selection, right click on my path, go to default. That will give me, again, to the correct neighborhood. We created an adjacent folder called demo. So I'm going to jump up one layer and go to that folder. And in here, I've created the demo parts _ tab document. All right. And if you're curious at all, open that stuff up and look at it in a text editor. Just don't modify anything. And I'll say open to select it. Next, we have the field assignment tool. I use this primarily to create an input data mask, which will protect specific fields in my parts database. These masks can be named and saved. Maybe you want to update some data in your parts database, but you first want to protect one or more fields, such as the description or the ERP part number, from being overwritten. I believe you can also use this tool to map specific properties during import to different locations in the parts database. However, I've never tried to use this. Next, we have add new records only. When this is selected, no data for existing parts will be updated. You will only be able to import data for new parts. Then we have updating existing records only. When this is selected, the import will ignore new records and only update existing properties of existing parts. And lastly, we have update existing records and add new ones, and this works just like it sounds. For right now, I'm just going to select add new ones only, and I'm going to select OK. When I select OK, it will run the import. All right. So it takes a little bit of time depending on how big your file size is. And now when I look at my list, I will see a bunch of different new parts in here. I now encourage you to take a moment to browse your data to quickly get a sense if the imported data looks good. I'd also encourage you to review each part to assign all the relevant data that you can for your parts. Sometimes it makes sense to add data one part at a time, and sometimes it makes sense to update several similar parts at once. You can also create a field-based filter to isolate parts that have the text new part in the description, as I previously mentioned. Well, that concludes the demo for today. It took me quite some time to figure out this tool when I first learned EPLAN, and I never see users discussing it on the forum, so I expect that either everyone knows it or some users may be unaware that it even exists. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope that you find it helpful. If you're looking for help with your next EPLAN project, please contact us here at MultilineDesigns.com, your independent EPLAN specialists.